The Senate Finance Committee releasing its long-awaited version of President Trump's tax bill. Parts of the legislation are at odds with the House version. Could be even more at odds if this gentleman gets his way. Joining us now, Republican Senator Ron Johnson, member of the Finance Committee. He has said he's a no over how much the bill is set to add to the debt. I don't know how many times I said your name after your last appearance, Senator. I guess you spoke to me a little. It's just when you said, is it really that big of an ask to get back to pre-pandemic levels? We got a chance. You know, the House is Republican, the Senate's Republican, the President's a Republican. Is that too much to ask? It's still not going to happen. You've made some progress. Are you happy yet?
Good morning, Joe. Listen, we've made some progress. That is true. You know, the House is saying they're going to cut something like $1.5 trillion net in spending. The problem is, in 1 year, from 2019 to 2020, we increased spending by over $2 trillion. So we're talking about spending reduction less than $2 trillion over 10 years. So no, we've got a long way to go. Like I said, the House has made some progress. You know, there's no doubt I don't want to increase debt, increase taxes. I don't want to default on our debt. But this is a budget process, and Joe, if you'll bear with me, I'm going to be issuing about a 30-page report later today or tomorrow. Just lays out the reality. But let me just go through some of the key figures. For the 7 years prior to the pandemic, our average deficits were $661 billion. Then, of course, we went on the massive bipartisan spending spree in 2020. The 4 years following the pandemic, Biden and Democrats averaged deficits of $1.9 trillion. They didn't go back to pre-pandemic levels of spending or deficit. Now, the CBO score would have average deficits of $2.4 trillion over the next 10 years. Even the White House's what I would consider a reasonably rosy scenario, because it includes $2.8 trillion of tariff revenue, about $1.5 trillion of additional discretionary spending reductions. But even their scenario would average deficits of about a little under $1.9 trillion, a little less than Biden and the Democrats averaged over 4 years. We'll be averaging over the next 10. So the bottom line here, we're making some progress. The July 4th is an artificial deadline. The House bill is 1,100 pages. Just the Senate Finance Committee's summary of the tax revisions is 37 pages, a lot of complex detail. We don't have time to get this right by July 4th. We've got all of July, and we actually have beyond that in terms of when the debt ceiling comes due. What my role has been and will continue to be is I'm going to force everybody to look at the actual numbers, the massive deficits that we're projecting over the next 10 years, and then we'll let the chips fall where they may. But we haven't really looked at that. Nobody's been talking about numbers like that. They talked about, you know, the only numbers that count are 218 and 51. Again, that's not the type of goal setting we need when we're $37 trillion in debt on the road to about $60 trillion in debt.
I've also mentioned a lot of the things you said to Speaker Johnson, and he's well aware, too, and I know you've had conversations with him as well, and he just keeps coming back to the makeup of the House, makeup of the Senate, what can and can't be done in a perfect versus a good world. And then he had me convinced that, you know, you can talk about these things, but you have to deal with what the hand that that you've been given. You wanted to do you wanted to not do one big beautiful bill. Everyone maybe do one thing where you deal with extending the tax cuts and then go line by line and try to get below where we were pre-pandemic. There are those that say we could pass the big beautiful bill and still revisit and do a lot of the things that you want to do subsequently in other reconciliation bills. Is that not possible, Senator, or will that be the end result?
Right.
Will you?
That's what I'm saying. You know, this cannot be a one-and-done bill. So, again, the White House is definitely working with me. I appreciate the progress we've made. You know, what I always used to tell my kids, though, is 3/4 of the word can't is can. And I would argue because we haven't had from leadership, not the president, not the speaker, not the majority leader, we haven't had this discussion of the 10-year massive deficits. The fact that, again, we averaged $1.9 trillion over the last 4 years, and we're really not addressing that. We're not bringing that down at all. We're increasing. So leadership should start with, here's the problem that we have to solve, as opposed to the only number that counts is 218 and 51. So, again, what I want to do is force a discussion over the next month. the good news is I respect the president. I want to see him succeed. I respect the speaker. I respect Leader Thune. These are good people. We're trying to do a very hard thing. But again, I just take a business person's approach. The first step in solving any problem is admitting you have one and then properly defining it. You know, I suppose we all admit we've got a debt and deficit problem, right? We always say, don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem, but we haven't properly defined it if the only definition is 51 votes and 218. And just pull a number out of the air, 1.5 trillion. Sounds like a lot, but like I said, we increased spending by more than that in just a single year. This is unprecedented, what we've done in terms of increasing spending. So our response should be unprecedented as well. It shouldn't be impossible. It should be entirely doable and eminently reasonable.
Okay. So you did the Senate version has the SALT cap down to 10. You're probably for that. Clean energy credits, I think, go away quicker. Where's the lion's share of what you want to do? Where does it reside? I'm sure it's in Medicaid, isn't it? And they're going to go from 6%, what the states can tax the hospitals, are going to go to 3.5%. What would you do? How would you get down to some of the numbers that would be more palatable to you? Where would the cuts be?
So again, I start with those three pre-pandemic levels of spending, actual outlays from Clinton in '98, Obama in 2014, and Trump in 2019. And here's where we can save money. Just from 2019, the amount of money we're spending over and above 2019, fully inflated for inflation and population, is $384 billion in other mandatory, doesn't even include Medicaid, and other and non-defense discretionary. So it's $384 billion. If you include Medicaid in there, it's $517. If you go back to Obama in 2014, it's $578 excluding Medicaid. It's $803 billion. Again, this is spending above and beyond actual outlays, above and beyond fully inflated for population inflation. You go back to Bill Clinton, it's $1.3 trillion total. So there, I just laid how easily it's all over. It's across the board. It's in every spending category because we don't control it. We don't go line by line like a business does or like a family does. We set 75% of our budget, call it mandatory. And again, there's Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. But in other mandatory, there's over $1 trillion. And as I said, right now, just from 2019, we're $239 billion above fully inflated 2019 spending. So again, I've been railing about this. I've been beating my drum since January about this. It's been widely just discounted because we can't do that. That's too hard. We need to get 51 votes. But we haven't led with the definition of the problem. We haven't led with the massive problem that we have to face. So, again, my role in this is I'm going to force at least members of Congress, at least the administration, to look at the actual numbers, the massive problem we face, and I'm going to force them to deal with it. And at least come up with some, either say, we're not going to do it, we're not going to reduce spending, at which point, maybe, just maybe, and I don't even want to contemplate this, but just maybe, we ought to try and pay for it. Maybe we shouldn't keep cutting taxes. Maybe we've got to increase taxes on everybody. I think it's a stupid thing to do. I would just vote to extend current tax law. But if we're not really willing to address spending and the projected now, with the OBBB, the one big beautiful bill, projected $24 trillion in additional deficit spending over the next 10 years, something's got to give. And again, I'd rather control it. I'd rather have it managed as opposed to an acute debt crisis. We've been living in a chronic debt crisis. That's what devaluation of the dollar is. 1998, that dollar was worth 51 cents. The 2014 dollar is worth 74 cents. 2019 dollar is worth 80 cents. That's why people can't afford things. That's why we're really pushing the American dream beyond the reach for our young people. What we have done, what us old people have done, basically indebting our children, stealing from their future, their prospects. The way we've diminished them is immoral. It's unconscionable. We have to live up. We have to face that, and we've got to do something about it.
Senator, I hear you. I hear your message. I assume your Senate colleagues hear you too. Have they just gotten to the point where they figure they're going to move on without you? Do you have other senators who are in agreement with you? We've heard senators like Rand Paul and a few others who have come on this program to talk about their complaints with the bill. Are you all on the same page, or is this a group of individuals who each have their own issues?
I'm confident enough that we have a group of senators that will delay this until at least the August recess, so we can look at this. We have greater discussions. You know, we've got Rick Scott, who is probably the world's expert in healthcare. Nobody knows more about the hospitals, how much money they are raking in, the problems we have with rural hospitals, the problem we have with nursing homes. Those are real problems. Let's not address them through Medicaid, through Obamacare addition to Medicaid. So Rick Scott has some fabulous ideas. They're not being incorporated in this because we don't have time. We're rushing to get a result by July 4th. So again, I think I've got enough people say, okay, let's slow this down. We all want to get a result. We all want to vote yes on something, but just not this and just not now. We've got to take the time to find the problem, look at it, start coming up with real solutions, not just something quick papered over, because we got to do this by July 4th.
Okay, so this is you, Rick Scott. Who else is in that group that says, forget it, we're not doing this before the August recess?
So I don't want to speak for others, but I'm quite sure Mike Lee's with us. And then you've got Rand Paul, who seems to be a no matter what. But there's a larger group of fiscal conservatives that once we lead on this issue, they're working behind the scenes as well to get a good result. So again, we're trying to do this collaboratively, cooperatively. Nobody's mad at each other. I mean, I'm actually getting a fair amount of support from leadership because they realize this as well. We know we have to get the votes in the end. But what I'm saying is you're not going to get the right votes until you actually define the problem properly, which we haven't taken the time to do yet.